Hey everyone, I'm going to go ahead and get started. We had 6 people enroll for this class and I noticed a few people were missing, so I just wanted to give them a minute or two to get online here, but maybe they're going to watch the recording. So my name is Tara Lynn and my screen is mostly going to be on my desk tonight, so I just wanted to take a second to introduce myself. I'll be walking you through this workshop. I've been a Dot Mandala artist for over 10 years and I am absolutely obsessed with it. I love it, so I hope this becomes your new favorite hobby. I am a small business, a small-time artist, so I love every follow I can get. So if you could follow me on Facebook or on YouTube, I do like to post lots of free workshops and fun stuff to participate in, so I would love a follow if you wouldn't mind. This class will be recorded and I can send the recording to you after class. I'll give you information for that when we finish. Let's talk a little bit about supplies. All right, so the supply list for this class, what you're going to want is a 5-inch surface. You can dot on anything. You can dot on canvas, on wood, on stone, on a jewelry box. As long as you've got at least 5 inches to work with for the mandala, that's what you're going to need. And I'm going to work on a black background, so you'll want to get your surface painted black. If you haven't done that, now's a great time to get started painting your surface black. We'll talk about paint in just a few seconds, but go ahead and start painting your surface now so that it dries for you by the time we get started. You're going to need a basic set of dotting tools. Michaels sells a great set, and I'll show you mine once we get dotting. I use that for almost everything that I do, although you can get a set on Amazon that has lots of great options. You can get, specialty sets from Dot Mandala supply makers, and those are great as well. So we'll talk a little bit about the tools. You need a weld palette or paint pots. So anything that gives you a little bit of depth. Let me show you here. So when I say weld palettes, these are paint pots. Those are great. And what you need is just a little bit of depth so you can dot into the paint. Something like this would work as well because there's depth in this little curvy area there. So let's see. What else do we need? Okay, you can use a pencil, or if you've got a chalk pencil, that is something really helpful as well. I use a Stabilo All pencil to make my markings, but you could also just use a normal lead pencil as well. If you're going to use a lead pencil, I recommend just going really light with the pencil, and then we can hide that with the dots. So here is our supply list. You're going to need a dark, a medium, and a light paint. And then the only other thing I did not mention is just a sheet of paper. It can just be an extra piece of paper, a scrap paper. We're just going to practice a couple dots on there before we begin. So that is what that's all about. And then let's talk about paint for just a second. Let me bring up my paint screen here and then I'm going to share it. All right, so most often for dotting, I use craft paint. And the reason why I prefer craft paint is because it comes out of the bottle at the right consistency most of the time. You want your dotting paint to be about the thickness of melted ice cream or the thickness of a milkshake. You don't want it to be too thin because then your dots will run, and you don't want it to be too thick because then your dots will make weird shapes. And so here's just a few common dot mistakes, and most of them are related to the thickness of the paint. But you want your dots to be smooth and round. If you have any of these puckering issues here, it's usually because you either don't have enough paint or your paint is too thick. So look at whatever paint you have now. If you've got craft paint, it's more than likely perfect right out of the bottle. If you're working with artist paint or heavy body paint, you're going to want to thin that for what we're doing today. And you can just use your best judgment. We're going about the thickness of a milkshake. So that's a little bit about paint there. And then, let's see, share. A little bit about dotting tools. You're going to see me refer to my tools as either a rod or a stylus. The rods are the long sticks that are the same size on both ends. Styluses are the tools that have the little ball tip on the end, and usually they are different size on each end. And all of our tools might be different sizes, so I'm going to refer to them by millimeters, and usually the size that even if we're using different brands, whatever container that they came in or packaging will usually tell you what size they are. Sometimes the colors are not all the same, but you can also use your best judgment just based on the space that you have to create the design that we're working with. So I often teach where people have different sized tools, and that's absolutely fine. All right, and then a few terms. Let me get this up here. All right, so there are a few different things that we're going to create. We're going to create a dot. We're going to create lots of dots. When we create a dot, we're going to dip once into the paint and then dot once. And we dip and dot each and every time. The reason why we do that is so there's the same amount of paint on our tool every time, and we get the same size dots as we're working. There's a process called walking the dots. That's when you dip once, and then you're going to dot multiple times with the same tool. So each time that you make a dot, the dot gets progressively smaller, and it creates a different type of pattern. And then there's something called a swipe and a swoosh, and that's when we dip and dot once, but we pull that dot, so it creates a tail on the end of it. And we're going to practice all of that here in just a few seconds, but I just wanted to let you know kind of the terms that we're going to be using here. All right, so let me stop sharing that. So here's my surface. It's about 5 inches painted black. That's all you are going to need to create on today. And then what I'm going to do, I'm just going to mix up my paint. So you can take, if you bought 3 shades of pink, that is absolutely fine. I'm going to take 1 shade of pink, and then I'm going to add white just to lighten it. So I'm going to have a light, a medium, and a dark. And so it's okay to mix up your colors as well. And I'm just using Americana craft paint right out of the bottle. And if pink isn't your thing, you can absolutely use a different color. We're just using light, medium, and dark, and so that'll help you figure out which one to use. Right, so there are my 3 colors in my black for my surface. Now what we're going to do is I'm just going to get my piece of paper here. And I'm going to get one of my rods. We're just practicing, so get any rod that you have. And what I want to show you is how to hold the tool when you're making a dot. So what you want to do when you put your tool into the paint is you want to dip over the edge, so you've got plenty of paint on there. What you don't want to do is just get a little bit on the tip. You want to get a lot of paint on that tool. It's going to feel like you're wasting a lot, but it's really not as much as you might think. So go ahead and dip in the paint, and then you want to hold it at 90 degrees, so straight up and down, and you're going to give that paper a little kiss, and then lift up. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to take your paint and start stamping. Because what happens when you stamp is you just get these weird, it's hard to see on here, weird textures. That's not what we're going for. So you want to give the paper a little kiss. And I actually have a graphic to show you. Let me find it. That perfectly demonstrates. But sometimes it's hard to show on camera exactly what I mean. So let me find my graphic here. All right, so this is what I'm talking about. You just want to lightly give it a little smush. And you can see in this image here that at the end of the rod, we're not really touching and stamping as much as we are smushing that paint. And that'll get you the perfect dot. So practice a couple of those. You have to dip before every dot that you make. So dip and dot a few times so that you're comfortable with that. Try making the kiss on your paper surface there. Right, the next thing we're going to try to practice is with a stylus, we're going to walk the dots. When you walk the dots, you dip once and you make several dots with the same tool. So I'm going to grab one of my stylus tools. So when we're practicing, it doesn't matter which size. And you can go ahead and dip into the paint. Again, you want your paint to be up over the edge of that ball. So you want plenty of paint on that tool. So you're going to dip once, and then you're going to dot multiple times. And you'll see the dots get smaller. You can make those in a straight line, or you can make those in a curved line. And that's called walking the dots. So practice a few of those. next thing we're going to practice is with the stylus tool again. We are going to make a swipe or a swoop. So for that, you would dip once, you would make your dot, but then you don't lift your stylus, you would just pull, and that makes a swoop. And again, you can do these straight, or you can do them in a curve. Now, when I make these, I do not adjust my pressure. I hold it just like I'm holding a pencil in a writing tool. A lot of people try to vary their pressure to make the tail, but I just put it down, press on the paper, and then pull until I run out of paint. Sometimes, if you want to make a longer swipe or a swoop, you can dip and make a dot, add another dot right on top, maybe add a third dot, and that adds more paint originally, and it'll allow a slightly larger and longer swoop. So that's how we make our swoops and our swipes. So practice a few of those without adjusting the pressure. I've got my sample here. I'm going to try to keep that on screen so that is easy to reference while we're working. Let me clean up my desk because it is always a mess there. As we're working, I find it easy or helpful if I keep my tools in order of size. That way, especially if we're working with different brands of tools, it will be helpful understanding which one to choose. So I've got those laid out here. And then what I'm going to do is grab my pencil. And the first thing we need to do is find the center of our surface, whatever surface you're working on. And I'm going to mark that with my pencil. Now, if you enjoy dotting and you decide to do this, there are lots of stencils, and there's different types of stencils you can get, the little plastic ones, you can get some silicone stencils, and these make things really handy. But you don't need one of those to get started, and I most often work with cardinal points. So when I create, I will create with a line to my north and south, and then a line to my east and west. This one's a little crooked. And that's really all you need to get started. And then what I do is I'll just mark that plus sign right in the center. I try to make it as straight as possible, but as I'm working, I can visually even things up. And then if you want to make things a little easier on yourself, you can cut that in half as well. But once you get started and you get your first set of 8 dots on there, you really can work with that and not have the stencil. So that's how I work most frequently. And then what we're going to do to get started, I'm going to use my 8mm tool. This is a rod, so it's the same on both ends. And if you look at your set of tools, it's probably going to be the one that's right in the middle as far as size goes. So 8mm. I'm going to place my paint up here. I'm going to use my dark pink, and we're going to create a dot in the center. So dip once, hold your tool straight up and down. And create that center dot. Next, I'm going to use my lightest pink, and I'm going to use my stylus here. Now I have 2 sets of styluses. I've got one that's got 3 millimeters and 2.5 millimeters. I've got one that's got 1 millimeters and 1.5. If you've only got one stylus, we'll just use a large end and a small end, but I'm going to use 3 millimeters, which is the largest stylus that I have, and my lightest pink paint. And I'm going to create 8 dots around the center. So I'm going to dip and dot each and every time. I'm going to put one on my north, dip and dot again on my south, dip and dot on my east, dip and dot on my west, and then I can go through and dip and dot halfway in between each one. And that will give me 8 evenly spaced dots. All right, next I'm going to get my 6 millimeter tool. For me, that's my purple rod. And you'll see as far as sizes go, it's one step down from the center dot that we created. So 6 millimeters. I'm going to use my medium paint. So the color in the middle here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move out one row, and I'm going to place a dot in between 2 dots. So I'm going to center that dot in between, and then I'm going to pick up my smallest stylus. So whichever stylus you have that's got a small tip, and we're going to pull. I'm just going to place this right in the center and pull a little pin inward right between the previous 2 dots. And I'm going to do this all the way around. So another 6 millimeter dot, and then just use a small tip and pull some paint inward. Remember to dip each and every time. I'm going to use that same tool, my 6 millimeter rod, and I'm going to use my lightest pink paint. I'm going to add 1 dot in between the row we just created. So we're going to go out to the next circle and create a dot in between the previous 2 dots. dipping and dotting each time. And we're going to go all the way around the circle with that, so you'll end up with 8 of those. Next, I'm going to use my 4mm tool. That is the smallest of my rods. If you don't have a 4mm rod, some sets do not come with one, you can use your 3mm stylus, so your largest stylus. 1mm is not going to make a huge difference in the design, so you can use your smallest rod or your largest stylus. And I'm going to use my light pink paint, and I'm going to place 1 dot in between each of the dots we just made. So it's going to be right above that little pin that we created in the previous step. Dip and dot each time. Next, I'm going to switch to my 8mm tool. That's the same size we did for our center dot. So you'll see again that 8mm rod is right about, as far as sizing goes, right in the middle of my tools there. And I'm going to use the medium color paint. And in this circle we just created, we have smaller dots and larger dots. I am going to add 1 dot right next to each of the larger dots. So I'm going to line mine up so it's straight up at the top. This is our medium pink. So next to each one of those, there will be 8mm dots. next up, we are going to walk the dots. So that's just like we practiced in the beginning. We are going to walk the dots around the circles. And what I like to do to start is do my center dot. I'm going to get my 3mm stylus. That's the largest stylus that I have on the large end. I'm going to use my darkest pink paint. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a 3mm dot in the center of each of these circles. Once I've got all those centers, I'm going to walk the dots. So I'm going to dip again one time in my dark pink paint, and I'm going to choose a side. I'm going to do the right side, and I'm just going to dot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 till I run out of room. And you'll see those dots get progressively smaller. Then I can do the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's how you create a walking the dot pattern. And we're going to do that around all 8 of those. I'm able to fit 5 comfortably, so I'm going to dip and dot 5 on each side. Your number may be a little different just depending on your spacing. If you've got 4 in there, that's fine. If you can fit 6, that's fine. When you walk the dots around a circle, that's called a petal. So now we have 8 petals. We're going to add another layer to this petal. I'm going to move to my medium pink, but I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm using my 3mm tool, medium pink. I'm going to come and make all the centers first with my 3mm stylus. And once I have all my centers, I'm going to dip once with the 3mm end, and I'm going to walk the dots around. I can probably fit more this time since I've got more room to cover. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I can fit 6 comfortably, so I'm going to add 6 on each side. And we repeat that all the way around. So we're going to walk the dots on each side. Next, I'm going to stick with my same stylus tool, 3mm, and we are going to make a swipe. So we're going to add a center dot, 3mm again, and then we're going to swipe on each side, and it kind of wraps that petal. So I'm going to use my lightest pink. Again, I'm going to add all my centers first. So dip and dot each of your 3mm centers. Once you have all of your centers, we're creating a swipe. So remember, you're going to dip once into your lightest paint. You're going to tap it onto your stone, and you're going to use it just like a pencil. So you're going to hold it onto your stone and just pull to one side. You might want to practice on paper if you're not familiar with swipes, so you're comfortable, but it's just like writing with a pencil. Go nice and slow. You'll be able to pull the paint a little farther the slower you go. For the next step, we are going to create these large pins that go around the edge here. I'm going to use my 10mm tool, so it's one of the larger tools, not the largest. For me, it's my pink rod. I'm going to use my dark pink paint, and we're working on different surfaces. I realize we all aren't going to be working on the same thing, so use your best judgment. If you don't have room to add a 10mm dot here, you can go down in size. You can use 8, you can use 6. So if you're running out of room, don't feel like you have to use the exact same tool to make this work. But I'm going to use my 10mm. And visually, where I want to place this, and I'm just going to mark it with a pencil, but you don't have to do that, is I'm going to kind of imagine a line that connects my petals here. If you want to mark it with your pencil, you can, but this is what I'm visualizing. And I'm just going to go a little bit beyond that line is where I want this pin to be. So I'm going to place my dot, and then I'm going to get my 3mm tool. I'm going to dip in paint, plop that right in the center, and swipe inward. And that creates that pin. So again, the process was you create your large dot. Then I'm going to use my 3mm stylus, dip it in the paint, and then pull that tail. And I'm going to do that all the way around. the next step, I'm going back to my 3mm stylus. If you have a lot of room left, you might want to upsize to your 4mm tool if you have one. But what we're going to do is create this set of 3 dots. Now, all of these dots are the same size, so I'm going to dip and dot each time. I'm going to start with my center dot. We're working in the rows with the petals, so I'm going to find my center, go out the row with that petal, and I'm going to place my center dot first, and then I come back and add 1 to the right and 1 to the left for a set of 3. And I'm going to do that all the way around. I find my center, come out from the petal, add my middle dot first, 1 to the right, and 1 to the left. Be especially careful as you're working on the outer edges of your surface that you do not put your fingers in your wet paint and smudge your design. That is very easy to do. Now, this is the base of the design. This is what I put up as a sample of what we were creating, but you'll see here on my piece that I have on my desk, I have more dots, and these are called top dots. And top dots is just when you dot on top of a previous dot. And when I'm teaching, I like to let the people in my workshops decide where they want to put the top dots and what colors. I feel like this is a nice way to take something that somebody designed and make it your own, change it up a little bit. But for top dots, what you want to do is you're going to find a tool that's smaller than the dot on the base. So for example, here in the center, I added a lighter color. So I'm going to find a tool that's smaller, and I can place a dot right on top. Now, to do top dots, you want to make sure that your previous layer is fairly dry. Some of mine towards the middle are completely dry, while the large ones here on the end are not completely dry. So you might want to give your painting a few minutes to dry before you add top dots. But there's no rules here. You can just go ahead and top dot according to your preference. The easiest way to do it is just to find a tool that's slightly smaller than the dot that you're working with. So here in the center, I've got a top dot. And you do not have to top dot like I top dot. You can do it however you want to. But I added some smaller ones in this circle. You can skip a dot. So in this row, I did every other dot. It is totally up to you. So have some fun adding some top dots when your piece is dry. Remember, when you add dots, you're going to dip and dot each time. That keeps the size consistent. Or if you like it as it is, you do not have to add any top dots at all. There are some dot mandala creators that will add layers and layers of top dots, and some that don't add any at all, and that's okay. So that's where I'm going to leave you with this session. That is the complete design of Pink Party Dot Mandalas. I am going to share something with you real quick. Screens. All right, so here is my email address. So for those of you who do not have my email, if you're new to doing classes with me, I would love to send you a recording of this class. So you can create this design over and over. You can change the colors and make it your own. And through MakerPlace, through Michael's MakerPlace, we cannot send links or email addresses. So if you would like the recording, just shoot me an email. You can just, throw the words Pink Party or Dot Mandala class in the email address, and I'll know what you're asking for, and I'll send you the link. I may need until tomorrow just to get the video edited and uploaded, but I will have the replay available for you if you want it. So I wanted to make sure that you guys had that because I cannot send that through MakerPlace. So that is my email. It's just connect@taralynnpugh.com. So if you want to jot that down, I'll be happy to send you the recording so you can do this again and again. It will be on YouTube, so as you get comfortable dotting, you can speed it up. You can turn my voice off. You can pause if you need to on certain steps, so that makes it extremely easy. And then if you have any questions, I'll stay on here for just a second. You can put them in the chat, or you can just unmute and let me know. All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining. I would love to see your pieces. If you want to share, you can always tag me on Facebook. My Facebook page is the same as my name, Tara Lynn Pugh, Artist. I'd love to see what you create. And I do have a class coming up next month in MakerPlace, so keep an eye out for that. And hopefully I'll see you then. Have a good night, everyone.